Welcome to DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
It's your boy Andy, and welcome back to the DeFi Slate YouTube channel. Smash the like button on this video, that really helps us out, and sit back and enjoy the content. Thank you very much. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 57 of the DeFi by Design podcast. And we are here today after good old Barry Silbert said it's going to be a big week, and it has not been a big week. I'm waiting for the big week to be happening. What is going on, Barry? What are you doing to us plebs over here? Here we are talking about Ethereum again. Who would have thought? We're talking about scaling again. Who would have thought? And it's really important because there's actually some really interesting developments coming out in the scaling world. And we're actually really inching close to getting the deployment of some active scaling solutions that are going to actually really make an impact on the Ethereum community. Up till now, I think the most active Ethereum scaling solution has been the Arbitrum chain. It's still kind of in its infancy, but it's been working out quite well. And of course, we have Optimism, and actually recently, here's a little alpha for you guys. ZK Sync just launched their chain, so you can add the RPC in MetaMask and you can deposit onto ZK Sync. And methinks there's going to be some sort of reward for being on there early / interacting and doing some transactions there. So maybe try to check that one out and see what's going on there. But today we have the pleasure of speaking with Will from DeversiFi. Will is an Ethereum OG and has been into scaling Ethereum for, years now. And we've just been inching closer and closer to more developments and just actually bringing tons and tons of users to these Ethereum scaling solutions. And this one in particular is StarkWare and StarkNet. So we're going to dive into what that is, what's going on at DeversiFi, what the airdrop's all about, what the scaling is all about, and how you guys can be active in, doing your part to get Ethereum uncongested or decongested. So let's get over to Robbie, get him going, get him fired up, and get started here.
Morning, Andy. Yeah, it's another beautiful day in Florida out here. We were talking to Will from DeversiFi, ready to dig into some staking solutions. StarkWare in particular is, to me, very interesting because it differs from some of the other roll-up or ZK technology types of solutions. Andy mentioned ZK Sync launching as well. It's a nice little airdrop hunt, bit of alpha there for you, and we got some more airdrops to talk about here. So I will pass it over to Will and let him introduce himself and a bit about DeversiFi.
Cool, thanks very much. I'm Will, I'm the founder of DeversiFi. DeversiFi is a layer 2 hub for DeFi that's built on top of StarkX, which is one of the first scaling solutions from StarkWare. What you can do on DeversiFi is trade, send funds, borrow and lend, do basically most of what you want to do in DeFi, but without paying gas costs from your MetaMask wallet or Ledger. And actually, the kind of next stage of DeversiFi is also going to be launching on StarkNet, which you mentioned, which is going to be StarkWare's sort of second scaling solution, which is this open, permissionless, decentralized network version of the rollup. And we're also going to be building something on that, which is going to be launching when the mainnet launches.
Andy, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Cool. Real quick, Will, just for our audience who are kind of getting into, the layer 2 realm, I'm sure a lot of them have played around on Avalanche and Phantom, but we're kind of getting closer to a world where we're going to be actually on Ethereum layer 2. So if you want to give us just a quick rundown, not too technical, of the difference of the two rollups and StarkWare, kind of what the benefits, the pros and cons are of each, nothing too crazy, but if you were to explain those to, a newbie, and what the pros and cons are.
Yeah, so there's quite a few rollups in Ethereum at the moment. Most of them are just now going live. There's Arbitrum, which many people might have used now, which is live in a kind of beta format. There's still some security properties which aren't fully as secure as they will ever end up being. And StarkX is also one that's currently live, and that's the one that DeversiFi is built on top of, as is 𝗬𝗿𝗄𝑥, for example. DeversiFi you can kind of think of as the spot trading version of 𝗬𝗿𝗄𝑥, which is for derivatives. And the kind of major difference between those options and also ZK Sync, for example, is that this rollup that we're using, which is kind of built on this Stark proof technology, is application specific. So everything about like the individual rollup is designed for a specific application. So actually, like 𝗬𝗬x and DeversiFi both use that same technology, but we use it in very different ways for specific applications. So 𝗬𝗬x is on a rollup, which is not directly like the same one that we're on, and they've optimized it for derivatives trading. And on our rollup, we've optimized it for generalized DeFi. So you can do things like trade, do AMM swaps and provide liquidity to AMM pools, and do some simple like DeFi pooling to earn yield and make some transfers. But you can't just deploy smart contracts. Whereas on some other like future Ethereum rollups, you can just deploy smart contracts exactly the same way that you would on Avalanche or Phantom or Ethereum. But you don't. But like the problem there is that you also like therefore don't get the same benefits in terms of like super low cost and the super high speed that you can get from what we're doing, where it's like really optimized for those applications.
So, Will, by removing some of that functionality, it kind of restrains the scope of this rollup and allows it to move faster, move more efficiently, because it doesn't have some of these extraneous functions that it has to take into account.
Yeah, it doesn't have to handle every crazy thing you can imagine someone doing with a smart contract. It's just super tailored and optimized for exactly the kind of things you want to do. And you can add new stuff. It is possible to extend and upgrade it. And for example, DeversiFi is doing an upgrade in 2 weeks, which will add AMM functionality, whereas we started with like order book trading. And that is still going to be super efficient because we've tailored everything to work there for AMMs, but we don't have to deal with all these random things that could be deployed with smart contracts. And so the cost per transaction is really, really low. Whereas even now on Arbitrum, which is still in sort of being rolled out phase, transactions are still now costing like $3 or $4 per transaction just because Ethereum is getting so expensive. Whereas we're like, much, much less than $1 for transactions.
Right. I see a world where once this AMM is launched, and even now, where we can onboard users from FTX and Coinbase and Binance straight to this, straight to this rollup and into this system. Is that something that you guys are working on, and hold of utmost importance, or how do you feel about that concept?
Yeah, it's completely essential. I mean, my personal view, and this has got like more strong over the last 6 months, just because we've seen the way that the entire space is going, is that Ethereum main chain, like much as I love it, much as I'm a big Ethereum holder, is not going to be for regular people to use in a year's time. I mean, already now it's so painful. Every time I have to use it, I almost want to smash my laptop. And I think we're not going to see people going via Ethereum to get to rollups. They're going to be going to rollups directly from centralized exchanges or from other rollups via bridges. And we're almost at that point now. I mean, on most bridges, you can already move around. For example, from DeversiFi, you can go directly to Polygon and back. And actually, most people, when they're onboarding to DeversiFi, come via our Polygon bridge, not via an Ethereum deposit. And we also already have a bitfinex bridge where you can send USDT from Bitfinex directly to DeversiFi and have it on layer 2, able to use it within this DeFi ecosystem and back. But like most exchanges haven't yet fully onboarded and integrated with layer 2s, but that's just going to have to be the natural way. It doesn't make sense to send $200 transfers of tokens on layer 1, even if you're using it to deposit to a layer 2, because it just is so painful.
Yeah. I was aping into a meme coin last night, 𝗬𝗬𝗀. I got like half rubbed, but anyways, it was like $400 to get in and then out. It was just ridiculous. It's nuts. I mean, is the process to set up that bridge from a centralized exchange to a roll up or to a layer 2, is that like a tedious and difficult process, or is it something that like a dev team like yours is able to do quite easily?
It's super easy, and it's essentially all you need to do is be able to make transfers on that rollup. And you can think of a rollup really, actually what a rollup really is a standalone blockchain which happens to derive security from Ethereum via this proof system. And most exchanges are already integrated with like 20 or 30 blockchains. So it's just one more to support and add, but there has to be enough demand and like enough critical mass to make that worthwhile. In the case of us doing the integration with Bitfinex for this bridge, it took about 3 days of actual developer time from their team and our team combined, which is not much at all, and that's including testing and everything else. It's just that I think right now the reality is there's just like the migration of users from layer 1 to layer 2 on Ethereum has been pretty slow. There's lots of things that keep layer 1 super sticky, including all the liquidity from Uniswap and other protocols that make it like less fast for people to move over and deploy things and start using things on any of the different layer 2 solutions. And of course, there's competition now from Avalanche, like a whole bunch of other side chains. And so the kind of growth is happening, and there's some really great trackers out there like Layer 2 Beat, which shows like the TVL of Layer 2 growing over time. But there has to come like a turning point at some point where just suddenly it gets enough that all the exchanges integrate and everyone moves over. But we're not quite there. We kind of feel like we're approaching that tipping point, but it hasn't happened.
Well, is there hesitation that centralized exchanges have, and Bitfinex might be kind of ahead of the curve here, but when I'm thinking about Coinbase and their earn product where they pay a few percent on any deposits in crypto that are held in their exchange, is there any hesitation for these centralized exchanges to open the floodgates to DeFi because they might lose some of the users that are currently trading on their centralized exchange?
I mean, there's always a natural there's always going to be a natural competition there, but we've also seen how successful it can be when exchanges really adopt these things. So Binance Smart Chain, I think, is the perfect example that everyone looks at, where they gain so much from actually directly integrating kind of a side chain with DeFi on, because users want DeFi. Users do want to now use their wallet, directly interact with DeFi from their own wallets, and there's no point fighting that. And equally, someone like Coinbase has invested so much in terms of infrastructure, people in building their centralized business on centralized rails, IPOing in the US. They can't fully adopt DeFi, but they do. I'm pretty sure, from what I've had, do actually want to embrace it and want to help with adoption, because they're not going to fight against the way that the industry is going. So I think we'll definitely see all these bridges and even just centralized exchanges directly integrating to offer DeFi, yields and things. But yeah, the kind of general trend is so strong now of people wanting to and getting used to that control of using all these products from their own wallets, that I think the kind of DeFi side is still gonna win long term.
Yeah, and they may onboard the side chains first, because the side chains have a lot of money effectively. We've seen Avalanche, Phantom, Harmony even just launch these wild incentive programs of hundreds of millions. So, they might be able to push the needle a little quicker than some of the others. But it seems like, I think, over time, at least the way that I view it is those will continue to grow. But once that kind of liquidity slows down, it should be at about a similar time when these Ethereum layer 2s are really hitting stride. So I think we'll probably see a pretty large migration of Ethereum kind of OG kind of decentralization thought process towards those other more secure, if you will, layer 2. So is that kind of how you think about these side chains versus the Ethereum scaling solutions? What is your view of the multi-chain world now, and what are your thought processes? What's been your experience? And then what, in about a year from now, what do you think will be different?
So I'm increasingly a believer that we're very much in, and will be, continue to be in a multi-chain world, and then there's going to be multiple tailored application specific blockchains for doing different things. Some of those will be fully EVM compatible, some of them won't. There's a lot going on in Cosmos, in Polkadot, all sorts of other ways of achieving scalable DeFi, scalable other applications. In the kind of DeFi world, around Ethereum, including all of its all these side chains that are EVM compatible. Right now, there's just a need. Most people, even if they can afford to use DeFi on Ethereum, it's just not fun. No one wants to be aping into all these things and using all these products when they're paying these kind of fees. And so people are naturally attracted to Avalanche, and even more, there's all these incentives and high yields on those other protocols. And so they're filling a need, and actually they are giving better security models than lots of alternatives that are out there. Not as strong as Ethereum, but there's obviously a trade-off between usability in terms of cost and speed versus Ethereum, where they're winning. But the difference is that we haven't yet seen that kind of explosion of incentives in the Ethereum layer 2 world. The only sort of really powerful incentive program that's already launched is on 𝗬𝗿𝗍𝑥, where they've launched their token and liquidity mining and loads of incentives. And actually, they've become, in terms of volume now, comparable and ahead of many centralized derivatives platforms. So it's been hugely successful, and that kind of shows the potential of what I think the entire layer 2 space can do. But when we look at Optimism, Arbitrum, DeversiFi, and others, which haven't yet done any of these programs and are still growing pretty fast, still getting more and more adoption, even compared with some of the sidechains which are spending lots in terms of token incentives, it's a very good sign. And that comes from the fact, of course, that it's closer to the heart of the Ethereum ecosystem, which still has the most assets. Because what most sort of other chains are trying to do is essentially incentivize people to move their assets from Ethereum and bridge them over to those other chains. But so it's going to be a sort of smaller hop to come to layer 2 once those incentives turn on.
Right. Yeah, and I think those layer 2s, all of them will have a token. I mean, that's gonna have to. I mean, that might have to happen.
100%. I think it's inevitable, and that's the only thing that can precipitate these big, at least for these big shifts to happen fast, because it does kind of basically require critical mass, and it's possible to build up critical mass over 2 or 3 years from having the best product over all that time. But when you're in such a competitive environment, if you want it to happen in 6 months or a year, then you need to be incentivizing people to move. And so I think it's completely inevitable that every single layer 2 is going to have its own token.
Will, can you unpack that critical mass type of concept? As is it an economic incentive that pushes people to move from L2 to L1 or L1 to L2? Or is it more of a metric of demand? What is critical mass to you, and kind of what does it represent once a protocol or an application achieves it?
So I think you can look at it on a protocol level and then a whole ecosystem level. So if within let's say one layer 2, you've got maybe one protocol that's equivalent to a DEX AMM protocol, which has some liquidity, and you need liquidity providers and you need traders to make it worthwhile for those liquidity providers to be there. And to start with, you don't really have either. So there's maybe a tiny bit of liquidity. The first users who come over try and use the protocol, and they try and trade and they get huge slippage. So they say, well, this is stupid. And they maybe withdraw their funds back to layer 1 and say, well, maybe I'll check it out again in 6 months. But over time, you see, more and more people depositing, putting a bit into the AMM because, actually maybe they can get high yields because the slippage is high. So that's on one protocol level. And the more that come, obviously, the more attractive it is for users, and kind of it's a snowball effect. But then you've got, alongside that, developers who have a choice and say, well, I could deploy to that layer 2, which has a not very liquid DEX, but not much else. Or I could deploy to, let's say at the moment, Avalanche, which has now Curve, 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So actually it makes sense for me to do that because I want my protocol to integrate with all of those, and they've got good liquidity. And so then you get a snowball effect again with developers who are building more and more there. And then users want to go there because there's more stuff available. And so there's kind of a certain amount of stuff which we've seen happen multiple times. We saw it happen with Ethereum in the early days. We saw it recently happen with Solana in terms of there just being enough going on that people wanted to keep building there and add more stuff. We're starting to see it happen on some of these other alternative EVM chains. And I think we will see it happen to layer 2s in the future. But you need to kind of get to that where there's enough going on and enough people, enough liquidity that it's fun and interesting for everyone else to come and join the party. I mean, it's the same as organizing a party, right? There has to be fun, good people there, but for you to want to go, and you have to tell everyone else that fun people are coming. And if you pay them in tokens, even better, because it's going to get pretty fast.
Yeah, Arbitrum has been slow on that. There's not a whole lot going on there yet. I'm sure there's quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's protocols that are just going to be, putting their apps there and moving there. But a combination of that with a token launch will probably be, a huge push for this critical mass that you speak of. And I mean, speaking about DeversiFi here, have you guys seen any changes in usage or metrics lately? And what are kind of the things that you guys look at to assess, your own critical mass as a protocol, whether it's volume or transactions or users, or how do you look at it, and what have been some of the changes recently?
So the main thing we sort of look at is like funded addresses that have migrated funds to layer 2 and kept them there. So we see like a lot more deposits and withdrawals, but not everyone like sticks around with all their funds. So we try and track like over time the growth in funded accounts, which is kind of people who've like moved to layer 2 and stuck there with their funds. And that's, I think, like basically been accelerating throughout the year. But really over the last few months, even more started to go kind of closer to parabolic in terms of stickiness of users. And right now, like what we offer is order book trading, and like all the markets we have good liquidity, but there's not that many of them. It's like 20, 30 markets. So you can imagine, as I mentioned before, in terms of critical mass, that's good if you are the kind of person who just wants to trade like all the bigger, Bitcoin, Ethereum, like most of the big like DeFi tokens, Matic, a few bunch of other things that we have. But if you want to like try all the new stuff, you kind of can't do it on DeversiFi layer 2 today. And that was one of the biggest problems we had in terms of like really getting like that critical mass adoption. You can also do some stuff on DeversiFi like deposit into compound and earn yield. You can transfer funds to other people. You can do some like new token launches. We have this thing called the DLM, which is similar to like a balancer launch pool. And we've done 2 of those now, including like the initial pre-sale like launch of DVF, which is going to be DeversiFi's token when we do liquidity mining and airdrops and everything else. And so, there's stuff going on, but it's not like you can just trade thousands of tokens, every time they're new. And so the big thing that's going to change that for us is going to be the AMM launch. And that's why we've spent so much time like building that. That's been our main focus really over the whole summer. Because that will then sit alongside order books and mean that for any new token, anyone can create a market, deposit funds into the AMM pool, start earning yield through fees when people are trading it, and also means that then users can like trade basically anything they can trade on layer 1 without needing to sort of move their funds back out, pay gas fees, and that's kind of going to make a big step change. And on top of that, of course, we're going to add liquidity mining so that a whole bunch of these AMM pools will be incentivized for people to deposit, and there'll also be trader rewards so that people who are actually among those early traders will be earning DVF tokens for trading on there too, and some to like migrate over their trading volume and liquidity. And so we see that as being like basically incentivizing both sides to make sure that there's the critical mass on layer 2 for people to come over and make that switch. And actually, there's already a kind of an incentive to make the switch, like in terms of in terms of the stick, because it's just so painful and expensive now on layer 1. But a lot of people kind of feel like they don't have the choice just because the choice of tokens anywhere else, including Arbitrum and other layer 2s, just isn't big enough. Most things, especially new things, you still need to be on layer 1 in order to trade them. But that's the thing we kind of need to change.
Yeah, and by launching that AMM, you kind of decentralize the listing process, so that anyone, if they want to trade a pair that's not listed, they can go and create their own pool. And could you kind of describe, or I guess extend that train of thought? Like, you have the AMM, and now that opens up some of these different economic incentives in terms of liquidity mining. What is the plan with DVF? And kind of once the AMM is launched, how will that change how DeversiFi looks, and how some of the interactions that are possible that users can use the system for?
Yeah, so I mean, right now there's 2 ways to use DeversiFi as a trader. You can use it through the trading screen, and you can use it through the swap screen. And swap just looks exactly like it would on like Uniswap today. If you go there, you see how much you're going to get. You press like buy or sell. But the difference on that screen will be that with this upgrade, you get the best price that either comes from one of the AMM pools or from the order books. So actually it means that you're usually getting a better price probably than just what the AMMs provide, because other market makers or other people who are placing orders can have like put limit orders that are, you know, around the price of that bid. And so it's a really flexible system, and that's pretty rare. Like there's not other AMMs where you can, you know, not just get AMM price, but also better prices from other sources at the same time. And so that's going to like really improve things for like traders, and of course alongside the much bigger audience. But the big difference for liquidity providers is that, yeah, you can just provide AMM liquidity, and there'll be a certain set of incentivized pools through DVF. So basically there's a 50% of the DVF supply is held by a treasury, which is already set up, controlled by token holders who can vote on how it's spent. And initially, that's part of that every month is going to be allocated to these DVF incentives. So part of each month, these incentives will go to liquidity providers. And to start with, like our team has chosen a certain number of these AMM pools to be incentivized, but token holders will be able to change those. So kind of similar to like how it works on SushiSwap now. So if like they can say, actually there's this new token's launched, and we think it should be incentivized with some DVF to kind of get people to deposit some liquidity. So that, you know, for the next month, like let's add some DVF rewards to that, and anyone providing liquidity will earn those. And then on the other side, traders who are trading on any pool, not just the ones that receive LP incentives, can earn some DVF in proportion to their fees that they pay. So every 7 days, there's a certain pool of DVF rewards, and that gets split amongst everyone who's traded on DeversiFi each 7 days, and you can claim them. So it's
nice.
Kind of cool in that then also incentivizes people to trade not just on the incentivized pools, but on all the other AMM pools and markets, which is good for LPs, and encourages people to come and provide liquidity. And we wanted to make sure it was like a really sustainable system, because that, like, if you only incentivize LP pools, and you don't have much like organic trading volume at the start, then as soon as DVF rewards stopped, you might see like LPs disappear. Whereas because you have both sides, you should have like a bit more of a two-way flow, which incentivizes all sorts of other, like some really good balance effects.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. And then like longer term, we'd imagine like DVF rewards like slowly tailoring down, which is up to the DAO, but it has the ability to kind of change how big they are. And then the DAO can eventually vote if it wants to turn a switch, which will lead to a percentage of fees that are collected going directly to anyone who's staking DVF tokens.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of intermingled kind of tokenomics there that play into A, the value of DVF, and B, bringing real users to DeversiFi. And fortunately for the traders who are trading, fees are going to be quite small when they do trade. So those weekly DVF rewards will likely be more than the fees that they even paid. And it reminds me a bit of Balancer, which is the only AMM now, guys, on Ethereum mainnet that will actually basically compensate you for your gas fees. So if you can, guys, and you have to be trading on mainnet and you're doing something in a larger pair, I would just do it on Balancer, because they'll basically pay you in BAL tokens. And so it just kind of that reminds me of what y'all are kind of doing here, and it's a really cool concept. As far as DVF goes, as a launch process, we know there will be an airdrop. Will there also be that LBP that you speak of, kind of the auction process over a few days, or is it strictly just an airdrop?
So we actually did that small like initial market where about 2 months ago we sold some to like early users of DeversiFi through this process. So it'll just be the airdrop now, and of course like the majority of rewards which can be earned over time from liquidity providers and traders.
And then as of recently, we saw Entropy come to y'all's platform to do their launch of their ERP token. How did that go? And what is the incentive for Entropy or other projects to come to y'all and launch their token through y'all's platform?
The Entropy sale was really cool. It was the first one other than for DVF that had happened on the platform. I think they mainly chose it because they were launching their protocol on Polygon, and we had the Polygon bridge, which made it really easy for like smaller users to get funds onto DeversiFi and participate. But also because there's no gas fees, like a much bigger number of like smaller users can start buying could buy ERP during the 48-hour period. And so the sale had, I think, just over 3 times like their goal in terms of USDC raised, which was really good to see. And actually the kind of average buy size was much smaller than it is on any like on-chain like IDOs and things like that. So it was like really successful in every metric in terms of numbers of participants, but also funds raised. And the kind of like it was for us, it was a bit of a demonstration. We want to like, you know, make sure people could see that like other teams could come and do this and how easy it was, and how smoothly it ran. And the other thing to remember is actually, because I think the mechanism is very similar to the Balancer sort of launch pool, but actually even just to run that now as the team, you need to spend quite a lot on gas because you have to constantly like adjust the parameters. It can cost like $10,000 or more like over the course of the period just to like run it, and of course that like reduces what you collect. So it was like it's completely free from that perspective, and quite cool. And probably we're going to be aiming to run sort of one or so of those at least on DeversiFi per month, and in future, like because right now, like in terms of the UI, it requires us to do some work in terms of our team to like make it really run smoothly, but we're going to open source that so that teams can just like freely run them with DeversiFi without even needing to have any contact with us.
Yeah, as an airdrop recipient soon, well, I imagine I've traded there before and used it, and I think I'll put a proposal up on the governance forum for DVF stakers to receive some sort of reward in all of the future LBP launches. So whether it's just a proportional amount to what you have or some sort of set amount over time, be really, really cool to have like entropy tokens over like a 3-month span, you know, have them agree, or, you know, any future launches to some sort of their token allocation to DVF stakers, which will, you know, obviously increase the value of DVF and staking, and hopefully get the DVF people interested further in the project that they have. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties, and that would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, the whole idea of like aligning teams around like DeversiFi, and for example, one of the reasons why we really liked Entropy is because you know, one of their goals is to try and make their protocol, which is a lossless prediction market, available to as many people as possible, and therefore that they were exploring layer 2 solutions. And again, longer term, we could imagine that something like that running on the rails that we've built in the same roll up. And so what we're hoping is, a lot of those teams, if they can align themselves through token distributions and other things, can also end up building on the same roll up.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it aligns the teams that are all, like you said, building around DeversiFi. And Andy mentions one way to align the incentives between these teams. I'm curious, and I kind of see it. I'm kind of thinking about the hub and spoke model again, where we didn't bring it up on this podcast, but we've talked about it in the past, where Ethereum is the hub, and then you have some different spokes in terms of these different chains. And with regards to this DeversiFi, more launchpad type of concept, where DeversiFi is the hub and has some of the other teams as around the perimeter, as far as those spokes. I'm curious what the incentive model is between the teams that are launching and DeversiFi. Andy pointed to a great potential alignment of incentives between some of those teams that are on the perimeter. But what is kind of the incentive model between one of those newly started projects and DeversiFi in the middle?
I think it's going to depend which time frame we're looking at, because, for example, this first one with Entropy, our goal was partly just to demonstrate like how it all worked and have another one to show and sort of point to and say, look, this works really nicely. But you know, the clear benefits for like DeversiFi in terms of like a layer 2 is that we onboarded like, you know, and can onboard on each of these like thousands of new users who come and try it for the first time and go, oh wow, like actually all of this works without gas fees. I just connected my MetaMask and I can like access all this DeFi stuff, including like these Launchpad tokens, which is like a great way of onboarding people, and because it's kind of like a fun experience as well. And then like actually it collects fees during the course of the kind of sale, and afterwards those markets continue running. But longer term, I think it's more of, as we kind of touched on, like really demonstrating like and open sourcing these tools so that like what we're building becomes more of an infrastructure piece, because like we've always started off, and that's kind of been DeversiFi's mindset of like building a lot of the core components ourselves. But as we're handing over more and more to token holder governance and open sourcing things, we really need and want like lots of these other projects to realize that they can basically like piggyback on a lot of the layer 2 infrastructure that we've built, because upgrading and moving to layer 2 isn't easy. It does take like developer time. You have to have quite like, you know, we've got an 18-person developer team essentially, which lots of like smaller and newer teams can't do, especially even if they can, they have to dedicate them to their core protocol. They can't spend them on like layer 2 like only. And so that's like the collaboration we can really see, where we can really help lots of teams to port over and start to make the you know, get the benefits of layer 2 without needing to do all of the work from scratch.
Yeah, so this question might be more geared towards founders or other builders in the space. It sounds like there's a route where an already existing project can migrate over to L2 with DeversiFi. It doesn't have to be a newly started project that's kind of sprouting and doing so from L2 natively.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on the project. And as I mentioned, like because of the way DeversiFi is structured, it's very much it has to be tailored solutions. But there's certain things that, you know, are common across nearly all DeFi products, which is, for example, trading, AMMs, transfers, and those kind of things we already support. We already support airdrops, a bunch of other things that lots of, you know, protocols and products need around them. And then that kind of, you know, each of those can be considered as kind of modules that, you know, if you're then want to build on layer 2, okay, you may need to design like one new module, and we can help with that. But then all of the other stuff, like you can kind of make use of that already exists. And one of the things to kind of mention about sort of StarkX, which is kind of the rollup tech, is that it uses this language called 𝗁, which you can write any smart contract in. You can write tailored stuff. It's just a different language than Solidity that you use for smart contracts. But one of the things that's coming with StarkNet, which is kind of the next version, is this thing called Warp, which is a transpiler. So you can then take Solidity smart contracts and kind of turn them into 𝗁 code. And so it's not the most efficient way of using layer 2, but it means that if you want like a quick way of getting to layer 2, you can use that on maybe like your core protocol, and then make use of these optimized like other pieces that we already have. And so that's kind of the route that we imagine in the future of how teams could really quickly sort of migrate up. Yeah.
The network impact of DeversiFi compared to the last time we spoke seems to be massively accelerated. I think it was about a year ago, maybe 6 to 8 months, where DeversiFi was still, exploring some staking options and exploring some different liquidity mining incentives around trading in particular. But it was still very much so an application where someone could come and trade, and that was about it. Whereas now, really, DeversiFi seems to have become more of a protocol where other applications can come build on top, either launch a pool, launch a market pair on the AMM, or interact with DeversiFi in one of these other ways where it's building composability across the entire ecosystem rather than just building up its own audience of traders.
That's 100% what our aim is. I wouldn't say we're fully there yet, but we're definitely, compared to 8 months ago, whenever it was, we've gone a long way. And I think hopefully, the next checkpoint, 6 months from now, I think we would have made that transition even more completely. But that's definitely been like our stated goal for quite a while now, is that we want to become this protocol become at a protocol level and sort of be more of a hub for these things.
Cool. Well, a little bit off topic here. What do you think about NFTs on layer 2? OpenSea is simply unusable. What's like? Do you have any alpha for us? I mean, what's going on there? Do you know?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot going on with NFTs on layer 2. There's also, I think Solana's taking a lot of share from Ethereum at the moment, but it's pretty I think 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵, which is the kind of leading StarkX based NFT platform, is now offering the ability for pretty much any like NFT like issuer to really quickly like reissue on layer 2 and have them tradable there, which is pretty cool. DeversiFi actually also has like at a really low level like the ability to support NFTs, and that's kind of almost like baked in, but we haven't like put anything available for developers or like in our UI to do that yet. But there will, like, that's definitely on our own roadmap. But for NFTs, to me, it almost makes like even more sense for it to be on layer 2, because these things don't necessarily like move a lot, but it doesn't make sense when you're moving a JPEG to pay like hundreds of dollars to do that. And so it will really depend, I think, on the marketplaces. OpenSea just has such like a strong market share grip in Ethereum that it's really hard for anyone who's not collaborating with them, I think, to like, even if you built like, a much better UI, a much better like product on layer 2 for trading NFTs, it would still be hard to win people over, just because like everyone goes to OpenSea to look for NFTs, and otherwise people just don't see them. So I think it's a really hard challenge. It's even harder than for DEXs, just because like the market share is just so much more centralized, and literally it's like 99% is on OpenSea right now. But it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen, because it's just it's so needed. Probably, I think whoever wins it will launch a really successful token that like in some way incentivizes people to move over. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely waiting for the OpenSea token. That'll be a nice one. Do you own any apes or penguins or punks or art blocks, or what's your experience been with NFTs?
I've had a whole bunch of things in the past. My main like Ethereum NFT at the moment is Loot, which I was quite a big fan of, just because like cool concept, and I kind of I really like this idea of like community building all sorts of like games and tools around like the core Loot NFT, which if anyone doesn't know is like just like a list of 7 like adventurer items, and then the idea was like maybe other people could build like maps and games and other things which use these. We haven't seen, I guess, like the attention span is like short for a lot of people in crypto, and so like it's a big ask for like there to be a huge game instantly build up around stuff. But it's still cool, like how much stuff has happened around it. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Cool.
Yeah, there was a panel at LizCon of some of the different. I think it was the founder of 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃 that was up there, and a couple of other gamified NFT projects, and they described kind of the process of making a really engaging game. How it takes like 10 years plus. I kind of opened my eyes to, why we haven't seen some more immersive games around NFTs with utility and different value there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like building a good game, especially on like a big scale, is hard. But obviously, even compared to DeFi, the number of people who obviously who play games is higher than people who use finance in the real world. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a massive one coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is there a world where NFTs will be used in DeFi? Like, do you think that we can see non-fungible, items be used in, intertwined with DeFi? Because we see it all the time in real life. Like, we all have cars and homes and, things and clothes and, even this computer, right? But like, what's the interaction you think, in DeFi? Are we going to have to get to a little bit more like real world applications, or, what's your thoughts as far as outside of gamification? Because I think that's like the main use case now is like, it's like an extra add-on almost, right? But is there any actual utility that you see coming?
Yeah, I mean, there's like representing real world things is a harder thing because you need oracles and a whole bunch of other stuff. But actually, one of the reasons why, so for example, one of the reasons why DeversiFi was first looking to do NFT like integration into the protocol was for NFTs for insurance. So that's where basically like within like the DeversiFi UI, you'd be able to purchase these like insurance NFTs from various different like insurance protocols in crypto, which things like Nexus, Unslashed, Bridge Mutual. There's a whole bunch of them now, and then you could basically hold that, and if like for whatever reason you like lost funds in certain ways, or like even if like DeversiFi had some sort of like smart contract issue, despite audits, touch wood, then you would like be able to get your funds back based on holding that NFT. And I think those kind of things are like make so much sense, and obviously like those are still DeFi native and do have on-chain representation, but I think that kind of crossover we're going to see like really soon. I think the real world assets represented will happen too, but there's lots of challenges for that and lots of teams working on it.
Yeah, liquidity in insurance markets could, I don't know, there's lots of explore there, but it seems like what you're describing takes the Nexus Mutual insurance product and then uses the DeFi composability to either fragment it or basket it with other insurance products or add some liquidity incentives around it to energize it a bit.
Yeah, a lot you can do on top of this.
Yeah, it definitely is. And also right now what we're seeing is NFT projects launch basically their own token to add utility to their project. And so, you've seen projects be able to have, their original NFT that you can now stake, and you can stake the NFT to earn some sort of secondary token. Like one of the largest ones is CyberKongz, that you can stake them and earn a banana token, amongst other things. So those are a little bit more like gaming and like fun utility, but I think that's kind of going to bring the NFT bull run back, is this utility of NFTs. So would definitely want to be looking at projects and doing research, not just into rarity anymore. That was kind of like the market, like that was like the sophistication level 1. I think we still have quite a few levels of sophistication left. And I think like the next one is going to be these, okay, how can I basically earn yield on my NFTs and stake them? And I think that's going to be like the next driver. And if you think about it, it's like the most basic thing ever in DeFi. It's like we've been there like, a year and a half ago, it was like, okay, I can earn yield on my assets. But for the NFT world, it's like brand new. So it's kind of funny to see how, the initial launches of NFTs could kind of follow the steps of DeFi to where it goes, okay, you can earn yield on your assets, and then eventually you could borrow against your NFTs, and then eventually you could pool them together maybe, and there could be like a liquid trading market for, apes and punks on some sort of NFT AMM, and it just keeps going and going. So ironically, I think they might follow the footsteps of DeFi's kind of growth in some ways. So if I was an NFT hunter right now, I'd be looking for projects that are launching basically a utility or a reward token, and trying to figure out how to get in those and how to stake. And I think that will do you well.
Yeah, so something very cool. It's founded by a DeversiFi alumni, actually, one of like our old product manager from almost 6 months ago or 9 months ago now. Is called Pawn Finance, which is where you can take any token, any NFT, and deposit it as collateral, and then take a loan on that. And the nice thing is you don't need an oracle, because basically lenders decide how much they're willing to lend you based on the NFTs that you put in. And if you can't pay back within, let's say, like 3 months, they get your NFT. So like the kind of incentive is on the lender to, and as the borrower, you choose the best offer you get from lenders, and it's kind of could be a very good loan terms using any NFTs you have, no matter what those represent. But if you're unable to pay back that loan at the end of 3 months, like they're seized by the lender, which is kind of an interesting model in that it could end up with like lenders also getting some NFTs at a really good deal you're unable to pay it back, but also like, you know, getting liquidity on things which right now, like there's not really any like easy price point to choose.
Yeah.
Is that
bit of a
PAWN pawn?
PWN.
PWN.
Yeah, like an NFT pawn shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting.
Interesting.
Cool.
This looks like it could go down bad. Woo-wee. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is quite the protocol. This is awesome. Yeah, cool, man. Really cool. Cool. Well, Will, what is on the upcoming agenda and roadmap for DeversiFi? What can our community get excited about? And how can we, be active in the community and participate?
So the biggest thing is going to be 24th of November, which is going to be the launch of AMMs, being able to create pools, deposit collateral, and earn for doing it, as well as earn for trading. So that's the number one thing to watch out for. It's going to be the first time that you can sort of earn DVF and then have a stake in like what we're building. Following that, there's going to be a whole bunch of cool stuff happening over the next few months, including a few of these new launchpad markets, which is worth signing up to our mailing list for, and generally just like joining our Discord and getting active, because it's going to be a non-stop few months.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, there's one question that we ask each person that comes on the podcast, and I know we're running tight on time, so. In a couple sentences, the question is, if you were to pitch DeversiFi and layer 2 scaling Ethereum, the entire ecosystem you're in, to one person, in the quick elevator pitch, who would it be and why?
I mean, I think a lot of people must give this answer, but Elon Musk clearly has like a lot of interest in crypto, but he doesn't seem to be engaging with DeFi, which is surprising. So I guess that would be the number one, especially given that, there's a real benefit for layer 2s in terms of green like credentials and like low energy usage compared to Doge or Bitcoin. So yeah, I think we've got a good pitch for him.
Nice. Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, man, and excited for these upcoming months and feature releases from DeversiFi.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Best of luck, Will. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.